Hello, all, and welcome to this Saturday afternoon's whiskey review, which I'm going to dub the unplanned whiskey review. I kind of planned on doing something else, but then I sort of realized I felt like doing this instead. Why? Because it's not as hot as it has been the past few days, so, you know, I felt like reviewing a whiskey, and this is one of the ones that Randall has so generously gifted, and it's probably the well, let's just say, you know how I usually go and do a tasting beforehand and research and whatnot. Well, this is a limited release, so you can kind of see here. This was done for Fujioka's, which is a sort of liquor chain attached to the Times grocery stores here in Hawaii. And I guess it's the basic High West whiskey, American Prairie Bourbon, aged in Orange Curacao barrels for 5 months, which obviously would have a heavy effect on the taste of this particular whiskey. Um, So you can see barrel number 19,226, bottle number 85, and this is, I can't tell if it's, yeah, it looks like 44.6% alcohol by volume, so slightly, above the usual 80 proof. So there's quite a bit of verbiage on the back. Let's just go and start reading it. You can see there's a lot. They wrote a Russian novel on the back of this, or an American Western novel, who knows? High West Distillery is passionate about the American West's natural beauty. That's why we want to raise awareness of one of the most fantastic projects of our time, the American Prairie Reserve in northeastern Montana. This is an amazing effort to assemble the largest wildlife reserve in the lower 48 states. When stepping onto the plains of the American Prairie Reserve, it's easy to imagine the landscape as Lewis and Clark and Native Americans saw it, with thundering herds of bison, racing bands of pronghorn antelope, and prairie dog towns dotting the horizon. When complete, the reserve will be approximately 5,000 square miles larger than Yellowstone, Yosemite, and Grand Teton National Parks combined. Go to AmericanPrairie.org to learn how to visit and support this worthy cause. And it sounds like a fairly worthy cause, honestly, inserting my own voice in here. I love wildlife preservation. Capable of running at speeds of up to 55 miles per hour, the pronghorn antelope is North America's fastest land mammal and performs the continent's second largest land migration of more than 500 miles. Because of their love of travel, pronghorn requires large areas of open and intact grasslands. Moreover, pronghorn populations have decreased 98% since the 1800s due to habitat destruction. American Prairie Reserve helps pronghorn through its ongoing fence removal efforts and by conserving wildlife corridors. Our American Prairie is a carefully crafted blend of straight bourbons at least 2 years old. See highwest.com for technical details and sourcing, making it a great sipper and a thoughtful person's whiskey. High West supports the American Prairie Foundation. To find out more, go to AmericanPrairie.org. So I think this particular whiskey started out as one of those infamous ones that had, were basically MGP juice. That huge source distillery in Indiana. But now it's blended from NGP juice. I have like the information here, just showing you. Blended from NGP juice as well as some other ones. So, yeah, mostly corn followed by rye, but I wouldn't classify this as high rye really. But what's most interesting to me, and let me get back to the camera screen here, is the bottling. So you can kind of see they've gone for a really classic look on the bottle here. So I know a little bit more about bottles than the average person, just due to a job that I had in the past, which revolved around modern archaeology. So I know a lot about bottle dating. So they tried to really make this look like an old style bottle. What you know, it's not completely authentic because you can kind of see they have this modern seam lines here. But what they did do was you can kind of see the glass on the bottom is uneven and has imperfections in it, a lot of bubbles, which is something you go and see in, the old style bottles made in the 1800s. Like I said, this is not a true style one. It's not blown glass. It's seamed glass here. But yeah, lots of imperfections in the glass though. So even if it wasn't truly a blown glass bottle, they did do their best to kind of create the experience of glass made in the 1800s. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't appreciate about it. But as I always say, it's not what's on the bottle, it's not what the bottle is comprised of. What matters most is the stuff inside the bottle. And let's get to that already. Now, considering this is a special limited release, you know, this is probably going to be a one offer. In that, the reviews are no help for me. I'm going into this kind of blind, only with like a singular tasting beforehand. Like most whiskeys that have MGP juice as their sole or partial component, this one kind of gets dinged in a lot of reviews. I think it's generally because a lot of whiskey drinkers have a thing against MGP sourcing with a lot of whiskeys, which I find strange because, I've drank a lot of the straight MGP juices. By that I mean, whiskey sourced from it. And while they're not fine, they're definitely good. And like I said, this one finished 5 months in a Orange Curacao bottle. And it really shows. Why? Because the dominant aspect in the nose is of candied orange. Underneath that, some spicy notes, almost like bready like notes as well. But bready, but there's more corn. But corn is kind of around that orange core there. Now, if you don't like my voice cracking now, wait until I take a few sips of this. So yeah, really dominated by that orange, some baking spice, corn, touches of vanilla. There's a legging here. And onto the palate now, shall we? As a side note, I had acid reflux after lunch today, and I'm starting to realize that whiskey after an acid reflux session is not a good idea right after I took that first sip. Maybe that's why my voice is cracking. So up front, you got that Orange Curacao. And it, it's strongest up front, but it kind of persists all the way into the long finish. It initially goes down smooth, but in the mid to finish, there's quite a kick to it, you know? So there's some alcohol heat, though it initially hides itself very well. There's some spice in the mid to finish. Which I find somewhat delightful. Somewhat. I apologize for the dog noises. Again. I'm not re recording this one, though. And there's some oakiness in the finish as well. But this is really dominated by that sort of orange flavor throughout. That barrel finishing with the orange curacao, really, really kind of dominates this. I mean, you still sense that it's a bourbon whiskey or bourbon style whiskey. It has that charred barrel finish, that woodiness in the finish. It has that vanilla. It has that corn aspect, at least in the nose. It almost makes you think that it's a high rye because the citrus from that orange is so present, but there's only a little bit of that sort of peppermint that I sort of associate with high rye or rye whiskeys in the finish. Actually, there's a little bit more, I think. Yeah. So maybe some. One of the whiskeys used in this was 21% rye in the mash bill. Top note, Orange Curacao. I prefer a little bit more thickness in the body. I would say it's decently, it's to style in this level of sweetness, just a little bit thin in the mouthfeel. Some interesting herbaceous notes now starting to develop in the finish. Very subtle, though. Yeah, I take that back. It definitely does have a little bit more of that sort of peppermint snap um, in the mid to finish that I associate with rye whiskeys or high rye bourbons. But again, predominant note here is of that orange. I would say that really this is almost like, say I went and filled this glass up with orange curacao, swished it out, poured it out, and then poured the bourbon in. That's basically the sort of, experience I'm having right now, taste wise. And the base bourbon really isn't all that interesting or exciting. I mean, do I like orange curacao? Honestly, I can't remember the last time I've had it by itself. I don't. Maybe I've never had it by itself. I'm pretty certain I've had it in a cocktail a few times, but I don't drink very many cocktails, so it's probably years ago when I last had it in a cocktail. But this tastes like orange, and I'm assuming it's from the orange curacao. Yeah. So interesting to a certain extent, but not super interesting. And I apologize for the vacuum noises. Um, I kind of think that this might be actually better on the rocks. Not that I drink whiskey on the rocks, but I think that a little bit of dilution and a little bit of coldness actually ought to tame that alcohol heat a little bit, as well as, you know, given the nature of the flavor profile, I think that it would help it. That it being room temperature right now, at Hawaiian room temperature, by the way, in the 80 degrees, isn't really doing this any favors. Yeah. So you might want to try this one on the rocks. Well, if you can get your hands on it, since it's a limited release. So thanks again to Randall for providing this special limited release of an interesting whiskey, bourbon style whiskey. And yeah, I might do one more video after this because I'm not really doing it to review the beer so much as just talk about beer for about 10 minutes or so. So yeah, I'm probably going to finish this up, and depending on my level of inebriation, I will make a second video for you guys. But for now, that is your whiskey review for this afternoon. Thanks again to Randall, and cheers.